Doohee runs for her life on a misty night, lost in uncertainty, as if she's always wandering through fog. When a man approaches, she wonders, will he be her savior or her enemy? Keep watching to find out what happens next. The scene shifts to a flashback to 200 years ago in the Joseon era, where a group of believers is praying at night. Suddenly, a demon appears in front of him. He blows up the candles and causes chaos. The demon, Goo Won, leaves a red rose and makes a fiery exit. Goo Won used to be human, but he somehow turned into a demon. He has wandered the earth for many years. He makes deals with desperate people, granting their wishes for 10 years, after which their souls will be sent to hell. Goo Won sees himself as an external force who gives value to those destined for misery. Later, Goo Won meets a hungry man, Park Bok-gyu, at the port during a famine. Goo Won tempts him with a fish and offers a deal. He reveals he's a demon and promises wealth for the next 10 years in exchange for Bok-gyu's soul. The hungry man excitedly agrees and signs a blood contract. Back in the present, Doohee is attending the 2023 Korea CEO Awards, where she wins the prestigious CEO Award of the Year. Doohee is a rich heiress and part of the Mirai Group, one of Korea's top beverage companies. A few days later, her secretary Shin brings concerning news about an article. It's revealed that someone has published bad news about Doohee's work on their newly launched beverage. She believes someone from within the company is trying to seize power from her, so she asks Shin to investigate and report back. Doohee also attempts to use this grave situation to get out of a blind date set up by her grandmother and chairwoman of Mirai Group, Ju Chon-suk. Sadly, her attempt doesn't work. Her grandmother insists on Doohee attending the date, threatening to skip her health checkup if she doesn't. With no other option, Doohee goes to the hotel where the date is set to happen, promising to stay for at least 30 minutes to avoid being rude. Meanwhile, Goo Won, who continues to fulfill people's grants, realizes that the time is up for one of the contracts. This time, the man is the leader of a mafia group. But when Goo Won arrives to take the gangster's soul, he's unwilling to accept his fate. He attempts to fight and negotiate for a new contract, but Goo Won declines. Our demon hero points out that the gangster gained power and wealth during the 10 years. Shortly after, Goo Won takes the gangster's soul by using his power. He then stages the death as an accident. After the man passes away, Goo Won flees the scene, but he's noticed by one of the mafia members. In the meantime, there happens to be a mix-up with Doohee's date. As a result, she ends up at the wrong hotel, where she encounters Goo Won, who is busy indulging himself. Our handsome demon is puzzled when Doohee claims they're supposed to be on a date. Due to the misunderstanding, the more they try to talk, the more frustrated they become. Goo Won just wants to stay in peace, while Doohee wants to figure out why this man is so rude and indifferent. They then realize that they haven't even introduced themselves, so Doohee hands her card to Goo Won. Initially hesitant, Goo Won eventually gives her his card. He then stages the death as an accident. After the man passes away, Goo Won flees the scene, but he's noticed by one of the mafia members. In the meantime, there happens to be a mix-up with Doohee's date. As a result, she ends up at the wrong hotel, where she encounters Goo Won, who is busy indulging himself. Our handsome demon is puzzled when Doohee claims they're supposed to be on a date. Due to the misunderstanding, the more they try to talk, the more frustrated they become. Goo Won just wants to stay in peace, while Doohee wants to figure out why this man is so rude and indifferent. They then realize that they haven't even introduced themselves, so Doohee hands her card to Goo Won. Initially hesitant, Goo Won eventually gives her his card. It is then revealed that Goo Won, when not working as a demon and soul taker, runs the Sunwool Foundation, an organization that supports traditional artists. When Doohee's 30 minutes ends, she decides to leave the place. As she leaves, she unintentionally bumps into the mafia men, who have arrived at the hotel to avenge their leader's death. At the same time, a waiter is bringing over Goo Won's favorite cake for him. Filled with vengeance, the mafia men attempt to throw away the cake. In the ensuing chaos, Goo Won swiftly saves his cake, while Doohee excuses herself to the restroom. While Doohee is in the restroom, Goo Won deals with the mafia men using his powers. He traps them inside a newspaper, but later lets them go, annoyed that they ruined his cake and interrupted his peaceful time. When Doohee returns, she orders him to be less rude if they ever meet again. On her way back, Doohee questions how her grandmother could set her up with such a rude person. She talks to Shin about the article, and Shin reveals that No Suan, the CEO of Mirai Group's subsidiary company, Mirai Apparel, is behind it. Doohee is disappointed that someone in her family is always against her. It's revealed that Doohee was actually adopted by Cheon Suk after her parents' death. The family comprises Cheon Suk's son, No Suk Min, CEO of Mirai Electronics, his wife, Kim Se-ra, managing director of Mirai Electronics, and their shy son, No Do Kyung. There's also Cheon Suk's daughter, No Suan, with her twin sons, and Ju Suk-hoon, the nephew. Cheon Suk, the grandmother, only trusts Doohee, much to the frustration of other family members. During the ride back home, Doohee receives a mysterious call from the company's finance head, Mr. Cha, claiming to have information that could make her the Mirai Group chairwoman. She then gets a cryptic goodbye message from Grandma Cheon Suk, leading her to rush to the hospital. Doohee is annoyed to discover it's just a prank. Grandma Cheon Suk wants to celebrate Doohee's birthday. We learn that Doohee's parents died on her birthday 20 years ago, causing her to stop celebrating. Grandma Cheon Suk wants Doohee to find someone to be there for her after she's gone. So she gifts Doohee 2 rings, one for her future partner, and one for herself. Doohee patiently explains that she doesn't wish to get married. Just then, Shin interrupts them and announces that Doohee mistakenly went to the wrong date. Meanwhile, Goo Won continues managing his foundation with Park Bok-kyu, the same fisherman from the Joseon era, and Jae Young, who is also from the same era, by his side. After talking with the grandmother, Doohee visits the beach, reminiscing about her parents and the last time they celebrated her birthday. Elsewhere, the finance manager, who called Doohee earlier, claiming to have information, is mysteriously attacked and killed. After spending the day at the beach, Doohee calls for a driver through an app. She gets into the vehicle and doesn't notice any inconvenience yet. However, the driver turns out to be the man who killed the finance officer. Doohee notices there's something wrong when she gets a message from the driver app on her phone. The app says that her actual driver is still miles away. Our clever heroine pretends to have fainted, and when the right time comes, she manages to get out of the car. In the meantime, Goo Won, in search of a new target from a clock tower, senses her desperate need to be saved. He then teleports to her location. Doohee pleads for his help, believing he's her best chance at survival. Goo Won explains he can assist only if she agrees to a contract of 10 years. Left with no choice, Doohee agrees to the deal. However, due to the urgency, Goo Won decides to confront the murderous man before finalizing the contract. As Goo Won fights the man and knocks him out, Doohee seeks shelter under a bridge. Goo Won approaches to help her, but the man regains consciousness and drives the car toward them. Goo Won then attempts to teleport them, but his power suddenly doesn't work. At the same time, Doohee slips from his grasp, while Goo Won, after realizing his power isn't working, jumps in with her. Consequently, they both fall into the water below. Inside the water, Doohee regains consciousness first and tries to rescue Goo Won by clutching his wrist. However, she struggles to lift him to the surface. During the process, the demon mark on Goo Won's hand mysteriously transfers to hers. Some time later, the pair wakes up ashore, and Doohee is relieved they're alive. Just then, Goo Won notices that his demon mark is gone. He is shocked to see it on Doohee's hand. Doohee suddenly faints, therefore, Goo Won takes her to the hospital. When Doohee wakes up, they realize somehow Goo Won's tattoo ended up on her hand, giving her all his powers. Goo Won can only use these powers by touching Doohee's hand. When Goo Won tells her about the tattoo and its abilities, Doohee thinks he's just bluffing, so she ignores him. Poor Goo Won returns to his apartment and tells his situation to Park Bok, who also works as his butler. After an investigation, Bok-yu learns about the serious consequences if Goo Won doesn't make a new deal with humans. It turns out that if Goo Won fails to make contracts, he will eventually combust and die. Left with no choice, our hero heads out to look for desperate people to fulfill their needs in exchange for their souls 10 years later. However, without his powers, he miserably fails to make a deal with a wrestler who has multiple opponents. In the meantime, Doo-hee, who is back on her feet, goes to the hospital where her grandma's being treated. She assists her grandma back home after she's discharged from the hospital. Her grandma got a clean bill of health, making Doo-hee feel relieved. But Doo-hee cleverly turns the tables by threatening to expose Soo-en's extramarital affairs, causing the latter to take down the negative articles. In the meantime, Goo Won realizes that he needs Doo-hee's help to get back his powers. So, he plans to woo her with his charming face. He manages to get her attention and take her to the riverside. He then attempts to drown her by throwing her into the water so he can recreate the scene from the day his tattoo got transferred to her. Sadly, his plan doesn't work out. Feeling humiliated, Doo-hee throws money at him, saying she doesn't owe him anything, that he doesn't have the right to treat her harshly just because he saved her life. Doo-hee angrily leaves, and Goo Won is left feeling sorry. While going home, Doo-hee's almost attacked with acid. But thankfully, Goo Won quickly saves her. Sadly, he gets hurt in the process. His actions deeply impact Doo-hee, and she thinks to herself about how his presence has changed everything in her life. This is when the tattoo on Doo-hee's hand mysteriously turns red. Goo Won explains he saved her to protect his special tattoo. When Doo-hee worries about his injuries, he magically heals himself, revealing to her that he's a powerful demon. But since the tattoo is transferred to Doo-hee, he can only make use of his power when he is close to her. Later, Doo-hee reports the acid attack to the police. They tell her the acid could have seriously harmed her, and she's lucky to be okay. Given the attack on the beach, and now this acid incident, the detectives wonder why someone would want to harm her so much. While Doo-hee talks to the police, a strange woman tries to warn Goo Won about incoming danger. However, he ignores her because of her abnormal appearance. After Doo-hee finishes giving her statement, Goo Won drives her home. On the way home, Doo-hee suggests that Goo Won becomes her bodyguard to stay close and protect her and the important tattoo. However, Goo Won turns down the offer, thinking it's beneath him. He then drops her off and returns to his lavish, yet ancient-looking apartment. Later that night, Doo-hee watches the news and recognizes the company's finance head, Mr. Cha, as the man who had phoned her. The news reports that the finance head was accused of embezzlement and committed suicide. Concerned, Doo-hee calls Grandma Chun-suk to check on the company. Chun-suk is surprised by Mr. Cha's death, but reassures Doo-hee that everything is under control. After the call, Chun-suk instructs her secretary to gather news articles about Mr. Cha's death and the company's financial statements for the last decade. The next morning, Goo Won wakes up feeling positive. He tells Bo-gyu that he can retrieve his tattoo by recreating the situation from the night he lost it. Suddenly, his fingers catch fire, causing chaos. This only indicates that he's combusting soon if he fails to find human souls and make a contract with them. Now terrified, Goo Won agrees to be Doo-hee's bodyguard. He takes her to a rooftop, claiming it's the best spot to find desperate people who want nothing more than to fulfill their current needs. Just then, they hear a mother's plea for her dying child. Goo Won brings Doo-hee along to a hospital to make a deal with the desperate mom. He then pressures the distressed mom into making a deal. The mom agrees to trade her soul and go to hell to save her child. Seeing this, Doo-hee is disgusted that takes advantage of people's desperation to survive. In frustration, she fires him as her bodyguard and walks away. Later that night, Goo Won tells Bo-gyu that he believes Doo-hee will come around when she's in danger again. In return, Bo-gyu shares details about the night Goo Won lost his powers. Since it was the night of a full moon, they would have to wait until another full moon to get the powers back. This means they have to wait 28 more days for Goo Won to attempt to get his tattoo from Doo-hee. The next day, Doo-hee struggles to concentrate at work, haunted by Goo Won's deal with the desperate mom. Meanwhile, her secretary Shin works on finding bodyguards for her. Later, Doo-hee is surprised to find Goo Won waiting outside her car, ready to be her bodyguard. The two then talk about why they changed their minds. Doo-hee is curious about Goo Won's life, while for Goo Won, Doo-hee is the only option to get his power back. While they chat, Doo-hee receives a message from Grandma Cheon-suk. In the message, Cheon-suk expresses love for Doo-hee and says it's her time to go. Doo-hee thinks it's another prank by her grandma, but she asks Goo Won to drive to her place. Sadly, this time, it is not a prank. Doohee finds her grandma dead in her beloved greenhouse. Devastated, she pleads with Goo Won to save her, but he explains he can't bring the dead back to life. The scene shifts to Cheon-suk's funeral, where her children pretend to be miserable while praying their respects. Doohee soon surprisingly learns that Grandma had ordered the formation of an audit team right before her death. However, something very urgent came up, so it was put on hold. To comfort her, Goo Won uses his powers to change the color of her dress from black to white. During this moment, a butterfly appears in front of Doohee, which she believes to be her grandma's spirit. Doohee then expresses gratitude to the old lady for helping her when her parents died and hopes to meet again in their next lives. Afterward, the detectives reveal that Cheon-suk had taken diclofenac before her death, a drug she was allergic to. Doohee finds this suspicious, so she connects it to the finance head Mr. Cha's death, the emergency audit, and the attacks on her life. However, Cheon-suk's son, Suk-min, and the family insist on keeping the true cause of death a secret to avoid negative consequences for the company's stock price. Doohee confronts the family about it and reveals to everyone that her grandma was possibly murdered. Soon after, the family lawyer starts reading the will left behind by Cheon-suk, revealing the old lady's bequests. The real estate goes to Han Sarung Welfare Foundation, while the Myri Group's management rights, shares of its affiliates, and everything else goes to none other than her cherished granddaughter, Doohee. Suk-min and the rest of the family are shocked, but Doohee is even more surprised when she learns about the condition attached to her responsibilities. She must get married within a year, or everything will go to the Han Sarung Welfare Foundation. It's also revealed that to help her family cope with this last surprise, Grandma Cheon-suk left letters for her children. She has criticized how money has made Suk-min and the family heartless. After the hearing, Suin loses her composure and attempts to attack Doohee, but to no avail. Meanwhile, Doohee approaches Goo Won and takes the daring step to propose to him. Unfortunately, he turns her down, surprising her. Goo Won explains that he is her bodyguard and wants to keep work and personal life separate. He then drives her home safely. After he leaves, Doohee realizes she's alone for the first time in 17 years. Before she can process her feelings, notifications about her rejected proposal pop up, making her all the more depressed. She later meets Goo Won and demands an honest answer about why he rejected her marriage proposal. Goo Won insists he wants to stay single, and Doohee claims to feel the same, but she's certainly embarrassed. Goo Won points out she could have asked any man, but chose him, so he wants to know why. The two continue to bicker about the proposal, until Doohee angrily walks away. Goo Won suggests giving her a ride, expressing concern about another potential attack. During the ride, Doohee reflects on life and why we often feel sad. She believes it's because many of us seek happiness in things that turn out to be fake. She shares about her late parents to Goo Won and how they died in a terrible car accident. Doohee also reveals that she turned to work to avoid feeling sad, guilty, and self-pity. She eventually falls asleep in the car. Quietly, Goo Won places Chun-suk's letter, which she left at the funeral, in her bag before waking her up. They bid each other goodnight when they arrive at the apartment door. Doohee then adds Goo Won as an emergency contact on her phone so that it would be easy to call him in case of danger. After he leaves, she reads Grandma Chun-suk's letter, which understandably brings tears to her eyes. In the letter, Grandma apologizes for leaving Doohee alone to deal with challenges, and encourages her to find someone to ease her loneliness, just like she used to when she was alive. Grandma Chun-suk also urges Doohee to give up if it becomes too overwhelming to handle the company herself, and to save herself. Doohee recalls the memories with her grandma and reflects upon her words. The following day, Suk-min refuses to allow Doohee to perform a postmortem on his mother's body. When she protests, Suwon slaps her angrily. Despite the humiliation, Doohee vows to uncover the truth and honor her grandma. In the meantime, the leader of the mafia gang, whose boss was murdered by Goo Won, is determined to find and make him pay. Doohee returns to work while Goo Won assists her. Our demon, who was once a human, somehow starts to remember more about his human life. He shares this realization with Bakyu, who is worried because the return of these memories means Goo Won is slowly becoming more human, meaning he is losing his immortality. This concerns Goo Won, so he decides to stay close to Doo-hee to recharge himself by touching the tattoo on her wrist. Doo-hee soon notices Goo Won acting differently and is shocked to learn that he's using her as a charger. She doesn't let him hold her hands. Their argument back and forth continues till their ride back home. During this time, the mysterious woman from earlier, who had warned Goo Won about imminent bad luck, sees them again. She continues to warn him cryptically, mentioning that good times are short-lived. The following day, Doo-hee plans to go on a blind date set up by her secretary Shin with a man she was supposed to meet on the first day. Shin also informs her about obtaining CCTV footage from Grandma Chun-suk's house. Doo-hee, with the help of a reluctant Goo Won, goes through the footage and considers using his powers to find the killer. Goo Won then makes her promise to help him get his tattoo back after finding the killer. He also convinces her to let him recharge anytime, anywhere. They sadly learn that Goo Won is unable to use his power to find the killer because he never saw the perpetrator's face due to his mask. Meanwhile, a man in a leather jacket visits Chun-suk's office and recalls their last conversation. In a flashback, we see that Grandma Chun-suk was disappointed in this man, mentioning how the apple never falls far from the tree. Before he left the place, he secretly swapped her medications. Back in the present, Doo-hee realizes too late that someone has obtained the main CCTV footage of her grandma's house before her. She also learns that her grandma's laptop has been wiped clean, further stressing her suspicions. After work, Doo-hee and Goo Won attend the company team dinner. Our handsome demon, who needs to recharge every now and then, repeatedly tries to hold Doo-hee's hand, catching everyone's attention. He also refuses to drink as he's still on duty, while the others enjoy themselves. When everyone else is drunk, one of the colleagues questions why Goo Won rejected Doo-hee. Goo Won confesses that he likes her, but humorously adds that liking pork doesn't mean marrying a pig. His response upsets Doo-hee, so she angrily leaves the table. Just then, the mafia gang shows up and confronts Goo Won for their boss's death. A fight soon breaks out, and a powerless Goo Won gets seriously injured. In the meantime, Doo-hee frantically searches for him and tries to ring him. She eventually finds him about to be beaten to death. Seeing his pitiful condition, Doo-hee courageously steps in to protect him, using pepper spray against all the attackers. Goo Won, moved by her willingness to defend him, grabs her wrist and asks if she knows how to tango. Confused, Doo-hee questions why, and Goo Won explains that in tango, partners must trust each other. While this is happening, a mysterious man takes pictures of Goo Won miraculously healing his wounds after holding Doo-hee's hands. Our hero then uses his power to lighten up the streetlights and magically makes the mafia gang dance to music. He and Doo-hee also join the dance while, at the same time, he swiftly takes care of the attackers. The show ends with Goo Won holding Doo-hee close and looking into her eyes as he wonders if he has fallen for her. Thanks for watching this recap. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss our next movie recaps. Stay tuned for more exciting recaps.